Hi there. My name is Sarah Levacy. I'm the Vice President of the Neurocritical Care Society and Chair of the 2022 annual meeting held in San Antonio, Texas, in the Hill Country, north of San Antonio, in October of 22. On behalf of myself and my co-chairs, Drs. Eljim Tesoro and Neha Dengayash, as well as our annual meeting committee, I'm happy to spend a bit of time with you to walk through our submission process to submit a session. We've worked hard over the last several months to create a platform that ensures that our community's voice is heard in the annual meeting planning process. So now more than ever, you have the opportunity to have your voice and the voice of those that you want to hear at the meeting represented. So I'd like to walk through the process of submitting a session. I personally think there's nothing more frustrating than wanting to submit something and having to log in and not quite knowing exactly what I'll need. So the purpose of this video is to spend some time walking through that process so that you can avoid that frustration. I'm sharing my screen here, and you can see I've landed on the Neurocritical Care Society homepage. And under the annual meeting event for 2022, the first thing you'll see is our theme for the year, which is simple, it's bold, and it's straightforward. Our theme is forward. I will say that I'm recording this video on January 13th, and we are in the midst of the Omicron COVID surge, and it's hard to imagine. We've had our annual meeting that was hybrid. We were able to gather in person. Feels like we've taken a step backwards this winter as we are facing the Omicron variant, and it's hard to imagine what the next several months and this next year might look like. But we're hoping forward serves as a bit of a rallying cry. So forward as we move through this pandemic, forward as we continue our work to cure coma, forward as we are continuing to provide or enable our community to provide really good quality neurocritical care, and forward as we shape neurocritical care over the next 20 years. This is our 20th anniversary meeting, so we'll be spending, I think, a bit of time both understanding where we've been over the last 20 years, and then again, conceptualizing what it looks like in the future and how we will move forward. So if you simply Google NCS 2022 annual meeting, it'll bring you to this page. If you come to the Neurocritical Care website and search using the events drop-down menu, you'll also be able to easily navigate to this page. And you'll see if I scroll down here that the call for presentations is currently open and is meant to be open through February 11th. So you have the next several weeks to plan and submit your session. So to submit your session, you'll simply click on Submit Session, and it'll take you to a landing page, which will give you some more information to help you plan your session. The first landing page is the domains. We've organized the submission process under 3 key domains. They're essentially tracks or common themes that we see at our annual meeting. And then as you move through the submission process, you'll be asked to select emphasis areas, because we are a really diverse community, both in terms of educational preparedness and roles in neurocritical care. And we are also diverse in terms of the disease processes that we care for. So we're hoping that by selecting domains and emphasis areas, that allows us to craft a meeting that covers key topics for all the members who attend. So you'll see here the domains are broken out into the science of neurocritical care, the clinical practice of neurocritical care, and then the delivery, quality, and safety of neurocritical care. Because our theme is forward, any of the topics or any of the submissions that focus in on conceptualizing what the future of neurocritical care might look like are absolutely welcome. And then again, you'll see in the emphasis areas how to craft your submission so that if you want to submit a disease-specific talk that focuses on a couple of different areas, how you might submit that. One other point I want to make about the domains is that it is certainly welcome to mix domains in a single session that's being submitted. Oftentimes we'll see that. For example, let's say that you're planning a session that focuses on subarachnoid hemorrhage, and you want to have a science talk that maybe talks about current research or research that's in development, and then you want to have several more practical clinical practice talks. What we would ask for you to do is to select the domain that a majority of the content that's planned into the session will address, but it's absolutely welcome to mix the domains, and you'll be able to, I think, indicate that as you move through your submission. The emphasis areas that I mentioned are listed here. I certainly won't read them, but I'll allow you to scan them. They're broken into, again, a number of different areas, whether it be disease entities, and you'll have the ability to select any of the disease entities on this list. Roles, APP practice, nursing practice, pharmacy practice, hospitalist practice, or other common and hot topics that we see. Ultrasound. Our pro-con debates are always some of the most exciting sessions. And so if you have any proposed debate topics or people that you think might be good to give the debates, you're welcome to submit that through the submission process. So again, lots of different ways that you can craft a session. As you see, I'm just scrolling down the screen here so that you can see, again, the content that you'll need as you submit your proposal. Our goal is for the sessions to all be submitted by Friday, February 11th. I will note that while there isn't a save button as you're moving through, if you at least get the mandatory fields populated and submit, you will then get an email that allows you to go back to your submission at any time until the submission closes to edit. So if you at least sit down and get the key information in, and you'll see shortly what is mandatory, what are mandatory fields versus what you can leave and come back to, you will be able to edit your submission at any time until the submission closes. In order to just make this seamless, if you're an NCS member, you will be asked to log into the website. If you're not a member, we still absolutely welcome your voice and your submission. You'll just be asked to create a guest account, again, so that you can get back to your submission and have a home for your submission. We are working hard in NCS to address diversity, equity, and inclusion, and want our meetings to be as diverse and inclusive and equitable as possible. So we are proposing a set of criteria that will help you as you craft your session to maximize diversity and inclusion. I want to note that particularly if you're only submitting a single session or a single speaker, a 20-minute session, or a shorter, even multi-speaker session, it can be hard to meet all of these in one session. And we recognize that. This is really what we're hoping to do in terms of balancing diversity and inclusion across the entire meeting. But do think of these criteria and try to, as you add speakers, meet these criteria, and you will be asked in the form to give a text response of how you've tried to maximize diversity and inclusion in your submission. I'll also mention that you will be asked, if you're submitting the submission on behalf of a committee or a section, you'll be asked to note that. And if you're not, that's okay. Again, it's just for us to be able to identify if there's a submission that is on behalf of a committee or a section. So you'll then be asked to submit the proposal. There's additional information here that you may find helpful, particularly around writing objectives. Objectives are key to communicating to the annual meeting committee what you plan to cover in your session, and both in the session overall as well as with each talk. And yet objectives are really tough to write. So we've given you some information here in the middle of this page around writing objectives. And if you click that link to Bloom's taxonomy, it will give you a quick reference of action verbs that you can use to organize your objectives. Okay, so at this point, the first thing you'll be asked to do is, again, submit a domain or a track. And again, this is meant to be what a majority of your content will address. So let's say I'm putting together a talk that a majority, I'm going to use my subarachnoid hemorrhage example, a majority of the content is related to clinical practice. I'm going to go ahead and select that domain and click go. So you will have the opportunity to submit a 20-minute single talk. If you don't want to plan a whole session, but you have a topic that you think would be really helpful to, to be heard at the annual meeting, and you just want to submit a single talk, you can do so. Or you'll be asked to select a 60 or 90-minute session. You will be asked to identify your proposed speakers, and we just want to remind everyone that it's best practice to reach out to those speakers prior to submitting their names and just confirm that they're willing to present. I also want to mention that if you, particularly as you're trying to balance the diversity and inclusion criteria, if you have an idea for a session, but you aren't quite sure who the right person or people are to present the content, you will have to identify one speaker, but all of the fields after that are not mandatory. So you could continue to write in the topics of the talks that you want covered, and even some of the content you think would be included. And you can just note, not sure ideal speaker, need help with speaker selection, and the annual meeting committee will help you do that. So here you'll see that my track that I've already selected is clinical practice, and that's reflected at the top. I'd be asked to type in the session title and then select the session type. So again, is this a 20-minute single talk? Is this a 60-minute session with multiple speakers, or a 90-minute session with multiple speakers? And I'm just going to go ahead and select 60 for now. I'm the submitter, so because I've signed in, you can see that my name is already populated here. And I have the ability, if I don't want to be the moderator or the proposed moderator, I can use this edit function here to select someone else. But if you want to be the moderator, this is not a mandatory field. Oftentimes people who plan the session are the best moderators because it's something you've conceptualized. So you can just leave that blank if you would like to propose yourself as the moderator. You'll then be asked to write a session description. So what are you trying to accomplish with this session, as well as session objectives. 2 session objectives are required, but we've given you the opportunity to add a third one if you'd like. And again, using the same link and some of the same content is listed here as a resource for those of you who are writing objectives. As I scroll down, now I'd be able to select my emphasis areas. So if you can select up to 3. Again, if you have more than 3 in a single submission, you might want to consider submitting multiple submissions. And again, we want all of your ideas. So submit as many as you think appropriate or as you like. So again, if I'm planning a session on subarachnoid hemorrhage, I click subarachnoid hemorrhage, and then I think, well, for the folks that are in my presentation or in my session, are there any other key areas that I'm addressing? Well, let's say, at least one of my talks is addressing informatics as well as bedside nursing. I could select those as well. You don't have to select multiple. You can select one if that's easiest, and then flesh out the details of your talks in the areas below, but you have the ability to select up to 3. Again, here's our criteria, and we're asking that you try to meet as many of these as is possible as you're planning your session. And so, but again, we recognize you may not be able to do depending on the type of talk or session you're submitting, meet every single criteria. So in this text box, you would just write in, I've got 50-50 gender equity and international representation, and you type in based on the speakers that you're proposing. Or maybe here's where you indicate, I've got great ideas, need some help selecting the right speakers. And again, the annual meeting committee is happy to help with that. If your submission is on behalf of a committee or a section in NCS, this is where you would just write in that committee or section. If not, then you just leave that field blank. And then the next several fields are where you would select your speakers or proposed speakers and their talk titles or areas that they'll address in your session. If it is a speaker that already has a profile, you'll be able to search for them using the edit function here, where you'll be able to add the speaker. And actually, even if they don't have a profile, you'll be able to add their information. At least one speaker is required in the submission, but if you have other ideas and again, aren't quite sure who should be the speaker, you can type that in. And you have the opportunity to add up to 6 speakers. We're thinking for the longer sessions, the 90-minute sessions, if we're doing quicker talks that are at 10 to 15 minutes, you may have a panel that is that has that many speakers, but please don't feel like you're obligated to to have that many. It's just meant to be fields for you to populate. At that point, you'd be asked to select OK, and the form will let you know if you've missed anything by mistake. It will then take you to another screen that will ask you to go ahead and submit your session. Once you've submitted the session, you'll get an email again that gives you a link directly back to your session that you can edit up until the close of the submissions. And be careful, just note that that may go to your junk folder depending on whether or not you've received these sorts of emails from NCS in the past. I actually get emails from NCS all the time, and mine showed up in my junk folder. So if you don't see it, go looking for it in your spam or junk folder because you'll probably find it there. And if you have any trouble at all, either submitting a session, if you have any questions and you want some help from the annual meeting committee to help, craft your session, we are here for you. And you can either reach out directly to Amy with our NCS staff, who's really helping to plan the meeting through the speakers@neurocriticalcare.org email, or you're welcome to reach out directly to me, Sarah, SARAH_L_Livesay, LIVESAY at rush.edu. I hope that gives you all the information you need to get the juices flowing and to plan your talks. Our goal would be to have as many member submitted sessions as possible. We want to craft a meeting that reflects exactly what you want to hear at the meeting. Thinking of forward as our rallying cry, and as you craft your sessions, we can't wait to see what you create. Again, please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. Thanks.